Hey guys, today we're going to talk about the United States political parties. In the next week or so, you will be choosing your own political party to be a part of in our legislative semester. So we're going to give you a quick background on what the political parties are in the United States, what they believe, and why we have them. So, first of all, what is a political party? It's basically a group of people with the same or similar political beliefs, right? It's important to know that not all Democrats or not all Republicans agree on every single issue, right? They might, for the most part, they have a similar ideology. They tend to be maybe more liberal or more conservative, but for the most part, they agree on a lot of the issues, but may go about them a little bit differently, or may have a few different issues that they differ on. These have kind of, in a way, always existed in the United States, even before the Constitution. Um, we had people, we had the Federalists and the Anti-Federalists when the Constitution was being made, and they were trying to, they teamed up and they were trying to make decisions on whether or not we should give the states more power or if we should give the federal government more power. And we really started to see political parties start around that time period. Interestingly enough, George Washington, in his farewell address from the presidency when he was leaving, he warned our country against political factions and political parties, and he said, "Hey, if we have political parties, everything's going to get messed up. We're going to get nothing done. Everybody's going to be trying to win rather than solve a problem." And of course, we didn't listen to George Washington, and he was right. I mean, in many ways, there's great things about the political party, but it really does pit one group of people against another group of people. We're pretty unique in the United States. We have a two-party system, right? Kind of. I mean, we have third parties, which we'll talk about towards the end of this. But in general, the majority of people focus on our two parties, the Republicans and the Democrats. That's not true everywhere around the world, especially in like parliamentary type democracies. You'll see multi-parties, right? There might be up to 20 parties, and uh, these parties are all fighting for control of the government. But in the United States, at least in the last 100 years or so, we've seen the two parties kind of rule the roost here. You can see here we have the Republicans. You'll see this elephant quite a bit. That's kind of like their mascot, you could say. Sometimes you'll see it is all red. The Republicans their color is red, and they're the elephant. Then we have the Democrats here on the right. They have the donkey, and their color is blue. But you'll see this in the red and blue with stars as well. Kind of an interesting thing here. Neither of the two parties like really picked these to be their symbols. It just kind of happened. I know Andrew Jackson in the election of 1828 against John Quincy Adams was called the jackass, and he thought it was funny, and to kind of just accept it instead of make a big deal out of it, he started to use a picture of a donkey in his campaign ads. Later on, after the Republican Party was made, and around Lincoln's time period, a little bit before Lincoln became president, we saw the elephant come around a number of times in like newspapers and things like that, and eventually both parties just kind of started to use these. So, what function do political parties play in the United States government? Basically, the biggest thing is they nominate candidates for public office, right? So if there's any public office that's up for re-election, both of the political parties will try and run somebody to get elected for that office. Sometimes a person might ask the political party to support them. Other times, the political party might actually go out there and ask somebody that they think might be able to win for their party to run. Their job then is to help get these candidates elected, right? They might give them money, help fundraise for them. They'll help to advertise for them. They'll give them inside information, do whatever they can to help get them elected so that their party is more represented in either the state, the local, or the federal government. Once elected, then, these officials try to achieve the goals of their party. And we'll talk about later how each party has a platform, and that's basically the overall general beliefs and goals of each party. And the candidates try to get those initiatives and legislation passed. what function do they play in the U.S. system? One thing that political parties do is they represent interest groups or groups of interest, right? So, for example, one party might represent African Americans, another party might represent small business owners or farm workers or teachers, right? So, depending on kind of the time period in history that we're talking about, different groups of people have supported different types of political parties. They also simplify choices for voters, right? When we go to the polls and we vote, sometimes you're going to have 10, 20 different things to vote for. And if you can do a little bit of figuring out what your own political ideology is, figure out which political party you side with more, it makes voting easier. Not that you shouldn't become educated about each individual race, but knowing which parties are being are up for election makes voting a little bit easier. You also notice that when you learn about the political parties a little bit more, you tend to learn what they support and what they don't. So, for example, Republicans tend to support small businesses. They tend to have more conservative positions when it comes to social issues. They want a smaller government. They want less spending. Whereas Democrats traditionally support like labor unions. They have a lot of minority support, and they believe that government can solve problems. So they, in many ways, kind of want a bigger government. They also make and promote policy, right? So eventually, they're going to take positions on important policy questions and try to encourage their members of their parties to support those and try to get these passed and turned into laws. So the Republican Party. The Republican Party is what we call on the right side of the political spectrum, right? They tend to be more conservative. And what this means basically is that small government's better. We need to focus on individual choices and not regulating people's lives, and focus on giving people responsibility for their lives rather than falling back on the government or being limited for having your life limited so that you can have other different types of programs to help you. They also have policies that have more traditional values, right? In many ways, they want to do what has worked in the past. They want to kind of stay the same. They don't want to take big leaps forward with brand new ideas and new initiatives. They want to take things that they feel have worked for them in the past and continue those things. The Democratic Party is the left side of the political spectrum. They tend to be more liberal, meaning that they think the more government systems we have, the better. So if we have government involved in stopping poverty, right, and we have more welfare programs and educational programs for the poor, we're going to have less people being poor. Realizing that with that, is going to come more taxes and a bigger government. They focus on shared responsibility of the community, right, so that if there's a problem with an individual, it's the responsibility of the whole community to help them, not just that individual and their choices. And lastly, they have policies that we consider more progressive in value. So in other words, they are willing to try new things, even if it hasn't been proven to work in the past. They are willing to be more open-minded about like sweeping changes, right? Oops, there we go. So this here is the political map. This is actually the Electoral College map from the 2012 election between Obama and Romney. So the states that are in blue are the states that voted for Obama in the 2012 presidential election, and the states that are in red are the states that voted for Romney in the 2012 presidential election. Looking at this, it looks like Romney might have won if you don't add everything up, because you can see all of this red here, right? But if you add it up, Obama actually won pretty handily in this. And just because the states are bigger that Romney won doesn't necessarily mean he got more votes. If you look at the East Coast, for example, this tends to be more of a Democrat, liberal type of area. And then on the West Coast, same thing. Those are some pretty big states when it comes to population, which means they're going to have more Electoral College votes. If we look towards the South, right, like from Texas over to Georgia here, these are states that tend to vote Republican the majority of time, and we call those red states. Up here in the Midwest, like Big Ten territory here, is where we see what we call swing states. Not all of them, but the majority of them tend to fall into this swing state category. So, for example, Wisconsin, the last few presidential elections, has voted blue or Democrat, but we've also had Republican governors over the majority of the last 20, 25 years as well. Ohio is the same way. They voted for Obama, but they have a Republican governor in John Kasich, right? So these are both kind of swing states that, because of that, we receive a lot of attention in presidential elections because these political parties come to try and win support of these states because they could go either way. So in the end, we do have a two-party system. Those are the main parties. Those are the parties that are almost always on the ballot. However, we have a lot of third parties as well, right? We have a huge range of them. You can see a bunch of them here. Some are a little bit more not very well supported, more for fun, but others are pretty serious political parties. For example, the Libertarian Party has somebody running for president right now. The Libertarian Party tends to be more socially liberal and fiscally conservative. Like, they truly believe in limited government, and that even means limited in social issues. Whereas we have like the Green Party, right? The Green Party was actually created for a specific issue, for like green energy and environmental type green ideas. But then you have some of these other parties that are in here that you don't hear about very often, but the Pot Party, the Freedom Socialist Party, the American Nazi Party, the Citizens Party, American Beer Drinkers Party, right? So you have some that are a little bit more of jokes, but they are parties. They do try to run candidates. They do try to get certain things passed. So we will talk a little bit more about some of those parties, especially probably the Green Party and the Libertarian Party, since they seem to be the biggest third parties right now that are gaining attention in our presidential election. So that's all I got for you today. Hopefully you learned a little bit about political parties today and are excited to figure out which party you think you'll support. We'll see you guys later.